Hey guys, and this is part 2 of my review of the LEGO Icons Dune Ornithopter. This is the set that really made me question all the people who say that they hate building Technic, because this set's building process was an absolute blast, and it involved so much Technic. Even though I was definitely going in way over my head, you could tell while putting all these mechanisms together that this is an absolute engineering masterpiece. But this is an engineering masterpiece, make no mistake. It is not a masterpiece of shaping, or a masterpiece of tiling, or a masterpiece of angles. And you can see that through the building process, how after adding all the Technic, you don't cover much of it up at all. However, there is one area in this set that I'd say the shaping for stands out a lot more than in the rest. The tinted transparent black color of the windshields affords the model an incredibly cool looking cockpit design. It also uses two of those recolored UCS X-Wing canopy pieces to create the shaping for the engine. They're put at an angle and you can open them up to remove the seating assembly. It's worth noting that this is the only interior in this whole set, which is kind of unfortunate, but I can understand it. Also, not using the half tile, half stud design is fine in this case to me, because you can just remove the entire thing, so there's no risk of the minifigure getting stuck. Also note the dark bush gray pods that serve to connect the canopy assemblies with brackets. They are quite superfluous and fragile. Thankfully, the set introduces a new canopy element which looks fantastic. Over 2 years after release, this element is still somehow exclusive to this set, which I don't understand, because it could be used in so many different places. It reminds me a lot of this piece. There are also no stickers in this set, and this printed Atreides house emblem tile is fantastic. And the white printing is surprisingly opaque. We do have to acknowledge the consequences of such a great Technic design. The underside is incredibly ugly looking, but many Technic pieces, especially axles and pins, are not available in that many colors, so it makes sense that those pieces would be miscolored. But even the axles, which are available in black and would match perfectly with the rest of the build, are somehow used in red here. Even this yellow piece, which theoretically should be safe because it's a system piece, is in yellow. Speaking of not covering up Technic mechanisms, the side doesn't even try with that. The basic shaping from the movie is covered, and covered well at that, but it becomes harder to appreciate that when there's so much missing here. Although a function like this landing gear actuator is actually really cool because it uses a piece that matches with the rest. Around the wing pods, the bodywork kind of just stops with no paneling or anything of the sort to cover it up. Yellow 3-length Technic axles and red Technic mixel joint pins are also used, although light bluish gray and black options are readily available. And then there's the orange toe ball bars. The wingspan of this set is absolutely huge, mostly due to the wings themselves, making it all the more impressive that the entire wing deployment function can be controlled from this single switch, denoted by this unfortunate red piece. The switch makes fantastic use of this piston, making sure the function is both stable and smooth. Unfortunately, a small problem with the wing blade pieces is that they're both molded on the same side, so a part of them curves up while the other curves down. The piston piece also allows you to put the Ornithopter's wing blades in intermediate poses such as this one, even though the switch is kind of messed up at the back. It's also worth noting that the black struts on which the wing blades are attached to, while necessary for stability, aren't technically entirely accurate to the movie. The quote-unquote real Ornithopter's wings are actually attached on the connection point that would be a ball joint if this were a conventional LEGO set, which it most definitely isn't. And while the connection for the wings isn't exactly perfect, it's absolutely necessary to give this model the sufficient stability it needs to support its width, enough to knock an unassuming bystander minifigure clean off the table. You see that button on the back that we just covered? You can use the incredibly stable rear strut to act as a handle, and you can then press the button, which will activate the simply majestic looking wing flapping function. Unfortunately, with such a complex double mechanism that had to be built into the wings, it's very easy to break everything inside, so they actually thought of that by making these panels on the back easily removable, which might be part of the reason why the set looks so incomplete from so many angles, is so you can access the mechanism to fix it more easily. And while I appreciate the effort, I feel there was probably more paneling that could have been added. I don't know, I feel like they could have covered it up a bit better. These removable panels might also be part of the reason why some of the front looks so odd. What with that 2x3 slope piece covered by a 2x6 tile doesn't look the greatest. Ultimately, this set sacrifices so much, but it has such an amazing set of functions that it does make up for it. Though the removable panels thing is really cool, and I do feel like sets with complicated mechanisms should be doing that more often. Making the boarding ramp be able to come out with the landing gear is actually impressive. The boarding ramp and everything that contains the landing gear is obviously entirely exposed when the model is fully closed up, but thankfully the landing pad complements the bodywork quite well. There's also a nice parts usage of a telephone piece being used to create some texture on the side of the landing leg. Speaking of which, the landing leg is accurately attached on the side of the landing pad, but the rest of the texture on the side looks pretty poor and mostly just exposed Technic, which is obviously all in service of the function, which is absolutely fantastic. One oddity I noticed with the landing gear function is that it straight up won't close up when turned upside down, probably due to all of the complicated Technic mechanisms inside. The blue pin showing on the landing leg is also not completely optimal, neither is the red axle there. I do quite like the look and greebling of these feet though, they are very nicely built. If I had to nitpick, I'm pretty sure that there's supposed to be one extra support in the landing skid, but honestly I don't know. I'm not as fond of the rear landing feet. They are fiddly, fragile, blocky, and unfinished looking. They did what this scale allowed them to do, but it still wasn't enough. They do carry over some mechanical texture from the front landing feet, but it's too little too late to meaningfully impact the way I feel about these landing feet. I have some mixed feelings on the landing pad, but my final thoughts are mostly positive. The mix of studs and tiles on it is incredibly effective, providing just the right amount of studs to put minifigs on. Obviously, it doesn't actually lead anywhere, but that's perfectly excusable. But what I'm not a big fan of is all the exposed Technic on the side. Since the section doesn't go inside anywhere, you could add a couple of half pins and add plates and tiles on the side to cover it up a bit more. But there's also one actual issue that I found with this landing pad. Firstly, the white connector pieces that do exist in black aren't quite the best. But basically, that tip of the landing pad that you see back there is supporting the weight of the entire back of this set. And you can even see that it's bending down under pressure. But the problem gets bigger if you push down on this too much. It's worth saying that that only applies to when there's actual weight being put on the landing pad, because you can use this as a handle to swoosh the thing around whenever you want, even though there already is one. And again, that exposed gray pin there doesn't quite look the best, but that was unavoidable. You also got some searchlights on the front. Now let's talk about these gigantic silver blade pieces. It's genuinely mind-boggling to me that this has only appeared in 2 sets so far. It is a huge element, but since it's also a bit more bendable than the rest of the parts, it's extremely light. And in this model, it's well integrated to the point that you can hold the entire set just by the silver sword piece. Speaking of that silver sword piece, it measures just about 31 centimeters long on its own, which, to give you a sense of scale, is the length of the MIDI scale Venator. There does seem to be something weird going on with the part where it tends to curve to one direction. This is in part due to the more bendable plastic used to make it less prone to snapping. One real problem I found with this piece during my usage of the set is that every copy of these elements in the set appears to have been molded facing the exact same side. This means they all curve in different directions, and when they're facing opposite sides, like on the wings, the pieces on the left-hand side have much more of a tendency to droop downwards than the parts on the right-hand side, which, fighting against the forces of gravity, have the slightest curve up at the end. That being said, the part is molded with a ton of accurate details, and has these 3 Technic pins at the end, which are its only form of connection with other LEGO parts. This is also conspicuously the only part of the set that uses black axles, even though there are other exposed red axles in this set that should absolutely be black as well, but I guess I shouldn't be complaining. Speaking of stability, this is also a really solid model. You can just punch down on it, as you can see, and it's not crumbling apart. Now, the cockpit isn't quite as stable because the windows are built sideways and they're an incredibly thin layer. So if you're as hard on them as I was to the body, it really will not hold up, I'm pretty sure. And I don't feel like testing it. If you bump onto the wedge plate that has the printed Atreides emblem, let's be honest, it'll probably break. Keeping with this set's theme of bad color blocking, there's a tan plate showing through on the bottom, but we're talking about stability, and in terms of that, there's not much to explore with the bottom itself. The set's play features are also extremely stable, and you can reuse them without breaking anything. Well, mostly. The back strut that serves as a handle is pretty well integrated, and it's mostly stable throughout, except on this very end section. This is where the set becomes too thin for there to be any Technic connections, so it's mostly just standard plates, and it's definitely not strong enough for you to hold it. It can also result in some pretty poor warping of these parts. Speaking of which, one of the unique pieces that LEGO introduced with this set that has gone on to become quite common is this 1x6x3 slope. This is a really good element for subtle curves. It has a 1x2 cavity on the very end, and has become quite the prolific LEGO piece, appearing 10 times in just this set. One small problem I found with the stability of the functions is that if you consistently press down on this black button to activate the wing flapping function, this 2x3 plate that's behind it will quickly get dislodged, especially if you press the thing towards the back. On the other hand, it's very impressive how sturdy the body is, especially given all the Technic functions that have to fit inside it. Like, there is literally a triple Technic mechanism going on inside here, and it's still this stable. It's worth noting that one time I dropped this thing from a high table, and it looked like this. So my point that the cockpit is the most fragile section has been proven. The single area in this set with the worst shaping has got to be the top of the main hull. There's a black stripe, which just shouldn't be here at all. The entire top is supposed to be dark bluish gray, and I think they added this to make the piston disguise better into the set, but it's still inaccurate. Despite the incredible shaping of the cockpit itself, the area right behind it does take quite a few liberties. It's quite square and blocky to allow the panels to open, and for whatever reason there's a lime green 2x2 tile showing through there when a black one is right beside it. I will say I like the use of the new 1x6 slope to frame the windows, and while I don't mind the oversized black struts, I do think that they could have made some of the pieces light bluish gray so they matched better with the silver blade piece. And in terms of shaping, the side has a total of 7 holes going right through it. So yeah, not exactly the best showing. The slope of the back is suddenly interrupted by the black switch. I do wonder if these two Technic parts do exist in dark bluish gray, and if they do, they should have been used here. Red and white also don't really look the best. So I'd like to highlight the sudden change in directions going to the back strut from the ends of the hull. It looks very unnatural, and I dislike how the slope basically stops. Although the shaping on the side of the back strut does look pretty good, there is like a metal bar that's supposed to be under here that's missing, and I think that could have been represented with either grill pieces or just a regular bar going under the strut. Speaking of missing supports, especially the front landing gear is incredibly inaccurate with that. However, I don't actually mind that. Where I really have an issue is the back landing feet. If we go over to the back, you'll see that they are far too big and thick, and the biggest culprit of that is the arm supporting them. The single Technic beam is not at an angle like it is in the movie, and it's also very thick and big, but that was the only way to make the back landing feet connect with the rest of the function, so I'll excuse it. A $165 set with 1,369 parts and 8 minifigures. It has a price per gram of 16 cents just about, and less importantly, a price per piece of around 12 cents. While I personally think that this set is mostly worth the price, especially given the 3 new molds introduced, the lack of stickers, and the huge cloth piece on the Baron Harkonnen minifigure, but the set's many shortcomings, chief among them, the mismatched colorful Technic pieces do hold this set back a bit. And that has been my review of the LEGO Icons 10327 Dune Atreides Royal Ornithopter, to which I give a 9.35 rating, based on the system adapted from Bachman Bricks. Please like this video and subscribe to the channel if you found it good enough to do so. Thank you so much for watching, and for waiting 3 months for me to finally make this video. And now we wait for Dune Part 3. Bye, guys.